In this video, we're going to show you how to replace a power steering pressure line on your Honda Pilot. Let's get started. Using a flat blade screwdriver, loosen the screw on the air intake. We're going to slide that hose assembly out, just like that. Using a 10mm socket, loosen the clamp on the air intake. Remove the intake boot. Using a flat blade screwdriver, we're going to loosen the clamp on the return hose. If the fitting is moving inside of the hose, you don't need to loosen this. You push on it and you can see the line move. Don't worry about loosening this. If it doesn't move when you push on it, loosen this a few turns and allow the fitting to spin inside of the line. Using a 17mm socket, we're going to loosen the return line fitting. If you're able to remove this rear line without taking this front one off, you can do that. But for space and torque reasons, we're going to need to take off this front line to remove the rear one. Once you get it loose enough, you should be able to loosen this by your hand for the last few threads. Be sure to have a collection bucket under you before you take this out. Fluid will come out. Get the fitting loose and pull the connection back. We're going to leave the line in the rack until we have all of the clamps off, and then we will remove it from the rack. Using a 10mm socket, we're going to reach down the back side of the engine and find the first clamp for our power steering line and remove that bolt. I'm going to fish a magnet down behind the engine and grab the bolt for the clamp and remove it. On the back left of the engine, there's going to be one more bracket. Using a 10mm socket, remove the bolt. Remove the bolt from the bracket. Going to the passenger wheel well, we'll reach up and we'll find our last bracket bolt right here. Using a 10mm socket, we'll remove that bolt. And remove the bolt. Remove the connector off the pressure sensor switch. There's a push tab right here. Push on that and remove the connector from the sensor. On this bracket, we're going to bend it open. And remove our small line from the rubber. I'm going to put this clamp back on this line. And bend it back around just so it holds. Using a pair of pliers, we're going to reach up and pinch the white clip that's sitting in the bracket. And we're going to push that clip through. And we're just left with our bracket. Using a 10mm socket, remove the two bolts on top of the power steering pressure line going to the pump. I'm going to hold a rag next to the line so when we pull it off, the fluid doesn't go everywhere. Wiggle the fitting and pull it straight up. If you have a plug, go ahead and plug this hole so no dirt gets into it. Grab the line from the wheel well and start to work it out. And remove the line from the vehicle. Using a 17mm, we're going to remove the pressure switch off of the old line. I'm going to use a 16mm wrench to hold this block. And remove the switch from the line. Check the O-ring that's sealing around the switch. Make sure there's no cuts or anything that'll stop it from sealing. Ours is good, so we're going to reuse it. And install it into the new line. Torque the sensor to 8 foot-pounds. If you can't get a torque wrench on there, do the best you can. Move the bracket from the old hose to the new one. Install the new bracket onto the line. Bend it over. Included with the line kit is a cap. We're going to install the cap onto the end of the rack fitting so that while we're installing it, it doesn't get a bunch of dirt inside of the line. We're going to install the new line. Once you get most of the hard line installed, you're going to want to flip it forward towards the engine and then feed the soft line up behind the engine. We're going to take a bit of clean power steering fluid and wipe our O-ring down with it. And then we're going to install it onto the line. If you have a cap in your pump, go ahead and remove that. And we're going to install the line onto the pump. Install the 10mm bolts. Torque the pump bolts to 8 foot-pounds. I'm going to go back and forth. I'm going to reach up and get the bolt started in the middle of this bracket. When we took this bolt off, we were up top. And now when we're installing it, we're down below. You could install this up top if you'd like, or if you can't reach it down below. But I'm going to get this one just started, but leave it loose enough that I can move the line through this grommet. Reaching down behind the engine, we're going to pull the yellow cap off of our line. We're going to reach down. We're going to put this line into the rack on the bottom hole. And then we're going to push that fitting down and get it started in the rack. Tighten it down by hand as far as you can go. You do not want this cross-threading. And then I'm going to start to snug it down. Once the line is installed, use a 14mm wrench and snug it down. And we're going to torque this to 27 foot-pounds. If you can't get a torque wrench in there, do the best you can. We're going to grab the second line and install it into the rack. Using a 17mm wrench, snug the line down. Once you have the line nice and snug, we're going to torque it to 21 foot-pounds. If you can't get a torque wrench in there, do the best you can. Bolt through the bracket on the back of the top of the engine. And we're going to leave this loose until we get the last bottom clamp on. Install the metal line into the shared grommet. Once you have the line installed, get the metal bracket around it and bend it closed. Install the bolt through both holes on the bracket. Using a 10mm socket, we're going to snug down the bracket bolt for the lines. Torque the bracket bolt to 8 foot-pounds. If you can't get a torque wrench in there, do the best you can. Snug down the other bracket bolt. You can either do this from the top or the bottom. Torque this bolt to 8 foot-pounds. If you can't get a torque wrench in there, do the best you can. Snug down the bolts for the brackets. Install the plastic clip into the bracket. Push it down, it'll clip into place. Install the connector onto the sensor. Push until you hear a click. If you don't hear a click, push back, make sure it's locked on. Remove the cap off the power steering fluid reservoir. On the top of the reservoir, it'll tell you which fluid to use. We're going to add power steering fluid into the reservoir until we hit the max full line. With the front of our car raised off the ground and the wheels able to move freely, we're going to work the wheel back and forth. You can either do this in the car by spinning the wheel, or you can do it on the outside just by moving it back and forth like this. I like to bleed the system just a little bit before we start the pump and move a bunch of air through the system. As you spin the wheel side to side, you'll see the fluid in this reservoir rise up, possibly bubble, and then fall. Keep working the wheel back and forth until you have no air in the system. Once you're done bleeding the system, fill it to the max fill line. Using a clean rag, we're going to wipe away any mess that we made. And then install the cap onto the reservoir. Install the air intake boot. Install the line into the back. And we'll tighten our 2 clamps. And you're good to go.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.